Hello, and thank you for taking the time to view my most recent video. Today we're going to be looking at the Sig Sauer Kilo Canyon laser rangefinder. I'm going to start with the basic stats that I took off of Sig's website because I bought this particular unit without the box. It did come with the pouch, but I don't have the manual in the box to show you, so I just have some handwritten notes to go by. First off is going to be the weight. Sig quotes 7.5 ounces. The unit by itself with the battery in is coming in about 2 ounces less than that. If we include the pouch, we're getting up to about 6.5, so we are just a little bit underneath the manufacturer's listed price. Perhaps if I had a lanyard, we would be right at that 7.5 ounces, but as it sits, we are at 6.5. The dimensions from the front objective back here to the rear of our eyepiece are going to be 4.6 inches. The height from the bottom up to the top where the buttons are is going to be 2.9, so basically 3 inches. And the width, crosswise, we're looking at 1.3 inches of total width. So it's not particularly large. It's about the same as most rangefinders that are handheld rangefinders. It fits well in my size 8 medium paws. The ergonomics actually feel pretty good. Anyway, take a little closer look at that in just a second. Our objective diameter for our front lens is going to be 22 millimeters. I'm working with a 6x magnification factor for all the viewing that we're going to do. Inside of the unit, the display that we'll be seeing throughout this video is a red LED display with a circle reticle for our aiming. The eye relief off the back lens is going to be 18 millimeters. This little bit is not adjustable, so it's just a fixed distance. The field of view, I was only able to find their angular measurement, which is 6.5 degrees. That's pretty typical for rangefinders. Anything between 6 and 7 degrees is normal. That's going to get us somewhere in the 300, maybe 330 foot field of view at 1,000 yards. Figure whatever that conversion, what would that be? About 290 yards or meters at 1,000 meters. And then the important information is going to be what it will at range, the distances that it quotes. For our hard reflective targets, the maximum range they're saying is 3,000 yards. I will be interested to see if that is true, because that will be in league with the Vortex Viper that I previously reviewed. So that'll be interesting to see if that's true. The trees, it's saying 1,200 yards, which is not a tremendously ambitious distance. I think that I would be surprised if we weren't able to do that, because that's not really that far for rangefinders. For deer, we're looking at 1,000 yards. I doubt that I'll have an ability to prove or disprove that. We are going to range some standard targets out to 700 yards, and for handheld rangefinder, even 700 yards is getting pretty ambitious unless you have something to stabilize it off of. By hand, even 500 yards gets difficult. Anyway, moving on. The battery in it is a CR2. That's pretty standard for rangefinders. I prefer a CR123, but this one's using the CR2. The price range that I was seeing was, as I was doing the research for this, in the spring of 2025, we're looking at $160 to $200 is the typical price range that I was able to find for new or open box. Things that were new but just had been out of the box once. I was seeing $160 to $200. And then one important thing that I found is that Vortex has apparently updated their warranty for optics that include electronics. It used to be that their infinite guarantee only covered the physical body, the lenses, and material defects, but the electronics had a 5-year warranty from the date of purchase, which, if you're like me and you like to buy used stuff, the 5-year warranty is essentially nothing, because unless you get the receipt with it, you can't prove when it was bought, and then therefore you can't prove whether or not the warranty was expired. So they have updated that to include all of the electronics inside of it. And that's going to be for like red dots, pistol optics, and illuminated scopes and illuminated rangefinders. They now have a whole infinite warranty on the entire thing. So that's good information. That's one thing that I'm happy that Sig has chosen to update, because that was really, caused me to not want to buy some of their electro-optics in the past. But anyway, we'll set that aside, get our hands on this guy, take a closer look at it. Starting here at the rear, I'm going to go ahead and pop this battery compartment open. It has a nice little plastic tabby. It doesn't feel particularly brittle. I do wish that those were metal. I wish the whole cap was metal, honestly, just for durability's sake. And one thing I noticed right away, let me see if I can get you guys a view on that. Those threads on that cap are plastic. And I don't like that. That's just begging to be cross-threaded. So, well, it is what it is, but we'll move on. It does have a nice little O-ring there to help seal it and keep out the elements, which is good because, these sorts of things typically find themselves out in inclement weather when you're hunting, and you wouldn't want water to get in there and ruin your rangefinder. Anyway, put that down. Pop our battery out. We do see our CR2 battery. I don't know if they come with that brand. That's just the one that mine came with. In here, inside the body, we find some more plastic threads in the body. Not a fan of that. We do have a little bit of circuit board material in there to create our circuit so that our electrons can flow and we can have power. We'll go ahead and pop that back in there. And I would definitely advise caution as you're putting this thing back together, not to cross-thread those plastic threads. So that could be a problem if you do. It does have a nice stop. Like when you're tightening that down, the cap definitely bottoms out and stops. So that's going to keep you from overrunning those threads and potentially damaging them. So that's nice. Pop that down. And on our body, right up here where we have our little bit of information, we also have our 2 lanyard holes. I suspect that this probably was supposed to come with a lanyard. I did not get it. I don't really care because I don't really ever use it. But if you have a lanyard of your own or some sort of wrist strap, something to retain it so you don't drop it, it does have a place on both sides. So if you're left-handed, you can mount it however you choose. Going above that, we're going to look at our rear eyepiece, which has a nice rubberized texture on it and a pretty smooth adjustment if you're going to have to set it for your eyesight, which, pretty much everyone is going to have to adjust it a little bit just to get it right for them. And the eyepiece overall has a nice rubberized cup, so it's going to sit comfortably against your face. It's not going to dig in, irritate your eye socket or your cheekbone or wherever you choose to place it. So I like that. That's a nice texture on there, nice and rubbery, good and soft. We're going to go to the bottom and see that the one thing that is missing that I wish was here: no tripod socket. For the average user, that's probably not going to mean anything, but for me, trying to catch video through this thing, I'm going to have to come up with a different way of mounting this because I can't just screw it into my tripod, which is a bummer. It does have a nice texturized finish though down here for the the web of your thumb. Essentially, it's got a little pocket there, sits in your thumb. It's got some good traction, so the texture there is nice. I'm going to give the body a little tap and let you listen to it. Yes, it does sound hollow. That is because it is made out of a somewhat flimsy, soft plastic. Soft maybe isn't the right word. It's plastic and it's probably a little thin, so it has some give. I can squeeze it and feel it moving. So it's not going to give you the most robust, sturdy feel when you have it in your hand. Like even like that, I can feel it squeeze a little bit. But that's probably just them hitting their price point. Going up here to the top, we have this little insert section with a different texture and a more rubberized material, which actually has a fair amount of grip on it. I like that. Other optics that I've seen with similar textures like this tend to do well when your hands are wet or your hands are sweaty or whatever. They don't get real slippery, and this one has that same sort of feel, like it's not going to be slippery in your hand. I do like the deeper scallops for your finger placement. And for me, with my medium size, 8 hands. They line up pretty good. It's got a good feel. It doesn't feel like I'm going to be, overpowering it and smushing it in my hand. It fits my hand well. And I do like these buttons, just the feel of them, the way that they're raised prominently above the bottom of the scallop, and you can feel them, easily. They definitely stand out. Whereas on the Vortex Diamondback that I did, the buttons were too smooth and you could barely feel them. And then with gloves on, they were invisible. These ones, I'll test them with gloves. We'll see how they go. But I think even with gloves on, they're going to be pretty easy to find, just because they sit in those scallops and they have a nice prominent presentation above the bottom of the scallop. But anyway, our two buttons are the range and the mode. I'm going to go through all of that later, but those are the two buttons on the top. Then as we move to the front, we get our logo and our bezel around our two lenses. This one being the objective that you see through, and the bottom one being the actual laser ranging unit. The bezel is plastic. It is not particularly firm. It's got a little bit of give to it. I definitely wouldn't want to drop this on anything hard. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence of that not maybe popping off, because it's probably just glued on. So, as with the body, the overall construction of this one is definitely a price point. It's not going to give you the greatest sense of durability when you have it in hand. But that is the difference between this and something like the Vortex Viper, which is almost 3 times as much. In any event, I think we have covered that. I'm going to take a quick look at the pouch. Nice nylon pouch. It's got a belt loop that should fit most typical belts. It has a little retention bungee strap. Let's go ahead and put that in there. Not particularly, I would prefer that actually to have a little more tension. It's got a decent little hook. You shouldn't have any trouble getting that. It's got the little where you can grab it with your fingers. Even if you have gloves on, you probably will get that no problem. Get that opened up if you have it on your belt. It's nice that it comes with a pouch. I definitely prefer a pouch as to just a lanyard. So yeah, let's go ahead and button this up in here. We'll go out in the field and we will start having a look through it and go from there. So I have us out here in the field now to do some ranging with our Sig Rangefinder. And the first thing we got to do is get it turned on. And what we are presented with is the display. I currently have it set up to give me some basic range data in this GRP setting. And at 500 yards, it's saying that I need to hold 3 milliradians of elevation, because the little arrow there on the side is showing up. And down at the bottom we have our range information, obviously 499.5 yards. So I'm going to go ahead and step into the menu itself, and see it brings us in here where it asks which group we wanted to use. And if you choose that, there's a whole host of them. You can go through 8. Each group is sort of standardized for a different set of common calibers that have relatively similar ballistics, and so you can go in the manual and find which one might work best for you. Then you get to choose milliradians or minutes of angle. I'm using milliradians. Then you're going to do your best, last, or first, and that's going to come into play depending on your environment and if you have things that you want to tell the rangefinder to ignore. I usually leave it in best because it's going to just give whatever it sees the best return signal off of and range that. Now we have our display brightness, which goes up to 6, 7, 8, 9, and then back down to 1, which we can't see, 2, 3, 4. I usually keep it about 5. When you get up to the higher brightnesses, especially in dimmer light, you're going to see some funky artifacts in your field of view, which I don't particularly care for. I will just give you an example of that when we get back around to the regular display. So I'm going to leave it on 9 for now. I choose yards or meters. I choose yards, and then we go back out here. I'm going to spin us around here, if I can keep this thing on while it's got the brightest setting on. And turn us around here to look into a deeper portion of the woods to show you what I'm talking about when the display is too bright. So that bright red circle that you're seeing there is what you will see through the rangefinder. It's basically the board that all the LEDs are on that make up the display. They wash out and you get a reflection back, and you can actually see that in your field of view, which is tremendously annoying. And it's going to make it harder to see things that you're trying to range, especially in low light. So what you have to do is match your situation with your brightness. And I find that in most situations, you can see right now that 4 is doing all right, but you just saw that little hint, and then at 5, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we're going to go ahead and leave it on 4, because as we look out across the floodplain, it's brighter. We won't have that issue. Then we'll go back around, exit out of the menu, spin us back around here where we can see what we're looking at and have target to range while we're doing it. So again, 500 yards. All right, back into the menu. The other things I want to talk, so we got that group. The other thing we do is AMR, which is an archery mode, which what it's going to do is give you a flat plane distance to your target. And the reason that might be important is if you're up in a tree stand using a bow and arrow and shooting downhill or down angle aggressively, you need to know the actual distance between you and the target, not the line of sight distance that's from you to your target. So if you think of it as like a triangle, a right angle triangle, the AMR distance is the base of the triangle from you to your target, and the line of sight distance is going to be the hypotenuse of the triangle from you to your target. So in different shooting situations, that becomes important. We're going to do, like I said, we're going to go back over to this group setting, get out of this whole menu, because that's really all there is to talk about. And all this is pretty well detailed in the manual. It's just kind of complicated to keep having to go around and around and around to describe all the things, because every time you go around, it exits you out of the menu and you have to go back into the menu to talk about the next thing. So it's not really a tremendously well set up menu in my opinion. It does have some decent features, but it could be set up a lot more functional as opposed to having to click through everything every single time. But anyway, I think that covers the menu pretty well, and we're going to go ahead and now try to range some things and see if we can find the limitations of this rangefinder. I'm going to move us slightly, and I will be back with you in just a second. I have us out here at our first distance, which is going to be 300 yards, to get some ranging off of these sort of standard targets. The big one we have is a full-size silhouette target like you would see it really any public shooting range, indoor shooting range in particular. We have 301 yards on that one. Then we also have an 8-inch gong. That is not the gong. Let's see if it wants to get it. There we are. 297. It is set just slightly closer to us because I wanted to be able to differentiate it from the gate right behind it, which at 430 or 43 is the trees in the background and the bushes in the background. Let's see if it'll hit the gate. There's the gate. 305. We want to see if we can get these 12 by 16 area regulations. That is got that. Let's just confirm it. Yep. And then the last thing we want to just try to see if we can range the vehicle out there. 400 or 314. I got a little bit of sun on the back of this, so it's tough for me to see what the screen is showing. Let's see about the front of the vehicle. Yep, 313. So we are able to range all of those targets rather easily. I did not expect there to be a challenge on that, but it's better to prove it than to assume it. I'm going to go ahead and move us now back to 500 yards, and we will see how we do with that distance. I have it set up at 500 yards now, looking at the same targets. We're going to go in the same order and start with the large target and see if it will range it. 23. That's it. And we're going to go over here and look for our little target. That is not it. That is the background. Let's try putting this in first. Oop, I gotta get out of this menu. Let's give this a try now. That is still not it. Even in first mode, we're getting the background instead of our little plate. Yep, so at 500 yards, it's just not wanted. Let's see if it'll do our regulation sign. Yep, got that. And how about the car? Yeah, we got that. All right, so we are unable to hit our little plate. It's just not getting it at 500 yards. We'll get the post of the gate, but just it's not going to pick out that plate by itself. But we can't get our, we can still get our silhouette target. It's not having a challenge with that. 501 yards. That's unfortunate. Anyway, but we've seen what we need to see here, and we can go on back to 700 yards, which I suspect will be the final distance that I'm going to do with this rangefinder. We are now set up out here at 700 yards, and we're going to see if this will still pick up that large silhouette target. Obviously, we're no longer able to range the small 8-inch target, but we can probably still get our silhouette. So we're going to give it a shot. Get this tripod freed up a little bit. .698 yards. Let's try for our area regulation sign off here to the left. Ooh, get in the background. Let's try putting this in first. It isn't first. Well, we may no longer be able to range the area regulation signs. We'll try this yellow one over here. Nope, it's showing me the background. Give this one more try. Doing a long press to see if it's scan mode it'll grab it, but it is not. It is consistently grabbing the background terrain, or the background trees. Give the car a try. 715, grab that easily. Yeah, let's try this one out here by itself. Not on the short press. Not on the long press either. That's the ground. We saw the 625. Yep, 625 is the ground in front of it somewhere. The trees behind it are at 935. All right, so we still range the car. We can still range our large white silhouette. And I think that is a good demonstration of what this rangefinder is capable of. And we will go on to ranging some other things like buildings and the tree line to see where we can get out here as far as long range. So I have a setup in the position where I wanted to be to actually do the ranging of these buildings out here in the floodplain. And we're going to start with this one right here in front of us. I'm going to just adjust this guy up a little bit. All right, so let's get this rangefinder turned on. And we're looking at 130 yards. That's pretty good. That's obviously a very generous target. Shouldn't have any trouble with targets like that at this distance. If we did, we would be in for a very short review. Let's try this little guy right here. So these are the transformers. 139. Let's get both of them. All right. It's giving us a slightly different. Those should be almost the exact same distance. So that's interesting that it's saying it's just a little different. Let's just have something to do with the reflection, or maybe that is just set back a little bit further on that post. We won't worry about it. We're going to try our little pole here in front of us. 28 yards, 75 yards, 121 yards, 130. Will it get the post over there? 140, yes it will. Okay. So our next target is this next building. At 531 yards. So if you saw there how it didn't get it, what you can do with this, if you do like a quick press and you don't get anything, you can kind of give it a press and a hold, and I guess it will send a little bit stronger, or it will ping it a few times in succession and come up with some information for you. It is getting that transformer, so apparently that's got a good return off of that. How about these bushes right here? Yep, 500 yards. Now we're going to go out here to this next white building. Just a little bit. I'll make sure I hit the center of that thing, give it the best chance to range it. 871, that's a pretty good distance. Let's try and see if it'll do the pole. Looks like we're getting that too. The transformer's on the back side of the building. Alright, what about if we try to get this little bush down here to the left? So it's saying that is 3 yards closer. Alright, let's move on. Continuing past that one, because that is our furthest building, to this one. There we go, 1,123 yards. Let's see if it'll get those transformers. Let's give it a long press. And it is not. So it was unable to catch those transformers. That's not tremendously surprising. It's not going to get that pole. Let's see if it'll do the trees. Okay, so it'll do the trees. That took a long press as well. So that speed ranging feature where you can just give it a quick press and it'll give you a real quick reading. It's starting to run out there. Let's see if we put it in last mode, if that will help us. Yep, so there, it must be getting just a little bit of interference off of those power lines between us and it. Not a surprise. I've seen that before. Oops, it didn't want it there, but if we go to long hold, we're going to go ahead and get the 1072. Alright, so now the real challenge is going to be this long distance building. And on the short press, we're not getting it. But on the long press, we do get 1,402 yards, which is a respectable distance. Let's see how it does on the tree line behind the building. It's not getting that. Let's try this side over here. Not getting that either. What about anything over here? So we can get this one here close, 10, but there's a big step back. There's almost 300 yards, or 400 yards, excuse me, between this building, or this set of trees, and that building. And the tree line behind that building is probably another 35, 40 yards. So, no, it doesn't want to get it. What I'd like to do now is pan over here to our left. It's starting to get a little dim out here tonight. I have to hurry. We're going to see if we can hit these trees over here and kind of walk our way down this tree line and see how far we get. So 900, 1200, let's get back, well, 120, a little bit closer. So there, we're missing that one. That should be, check that range with my other rangefinder, that I know will get it. So with my other rangefinder, I confirmed that that distance out there is right at 1,200 yards, well, 1,250 yards. There we go, 1,266. So we're getting it there, 1,271. All right, let's keep going. And this slopes away from us pretty aggressively. Ooh, there we go, 1297. Not reliably. Doesn't want to get it. There we go, found one. 1294. So if you hold that thing, it does do that, like I said, where it'll continue to send pulses out there and see what it can find. Oop, 1310. Now this is going to be a challenge because it's going to see a bunch of stuff between it and that. 1400. And then right here with my other rangefinder was showing me just over 1500. Yeah, it's not going to get it. Let's try the other side of the building, which is probably going to be 1650 to 1700 out there. Let me check with my other rangefinder real quick before we give up on this. Yeah, so right over the top of that next power pole where those transformers are is showing 1710 yards. So I'm not going to bother trying to do that because it's not really succeeding over here, you know, reliably at the closer distances. But we were able to get 1400 reliably there, 13. So we'll say somewhere in the 14 to 1500 yard range is where it's going to fall off. And that's not bad. I think that's enough for out here. Go ahead and get this packaged up and move us over to our next location where we can test the absolute long distance hard reflective target range of this. And I will be back with you when I have us there. I am going to have to go ahead and talk over this section of the video because on the day when I shot it, the wind was absolutely stepping on everything I was trying to say. If you pay attention here, you can see little bits of cottonwood seed flying past. That just gives you some idea of how hard the wind was blowing consistently when I was trying to shoot this video. But that's not going to stop me from using it because I am actually pretty happy with the overall quality of the imagery that we're going to see out here in our long distance section of the video. And the first thing I did was get the rangefinder set up for what I had previously tested as the best settings for this location, which was to put it in line of sight and in the last mode. And then because the day was so bright, I went ahead and cranked that brightness up to an 8 so that we would be able to see it even against the lighter areas of terrain out here. I'm going to do just sort of a baseline ranging shot at this berm real quick to give us an idea if the rangefinder is actually going to work today. Try to get it turned back on. And we are right here on this green grassy part of the berm, and we're going to have 718 yards. That's pretty easy. We confirmed that at the floodplain that it will easily range those distances. And then to step back, we're going to go back to 957 yards on that next section of berm. Also not really a challenge for this rangefinder. It was able to do that consistently. And then our first longer distance target is going to be this big white Connex box, which is sitting in a parking lot behind that berm, and it was at 1173 yards. And I was hoping to catch some distances off of these excavators, which are just slightly behind that at about the 1250 yard range. But on this day, I think the sun was interfering a little too much and just wasn't able to catch a signal off of any of that equipment. And so you're going to see me kind of fiddle around on it, try to catch something, but I was ultimately unsuccessful in getting a range on that excavator or the backhoe that's sitting next to it. So my next target was this gray building, which is actually owned by the fire department. And again, not trying to make the rangefinder look bad, but it was also unable to catch a range off of that, which is going to be at about 1350 yards. And then this next white building, also unsuccessful. That is a masonry or concrete poured building where I wasn't able to catch a range there either, and that one is going to be at about 1650 yards. And then our next successful target is these large white chemical storage tanks at 1869. But those are, you know, sort of ideal sorts of targets where they're light colored, broad faced, and with next to no interference for anything else around it. And then as we move over here to the largest target of the day, we are going to get 2182 yards, and then we're going to step out here to our next water tower and see if we can catch that, which we will be successful here at 23, well, let's wait for it, 23:25. And spoiler, that is the longest distance I was able to achieve that day. Even after this video, I had stepped back to what should have been about 2,600 yards and was unable to range either of those large tanks. So I'm going to say 2350 with these sorts of ideal targets is really about where you're going to max out on this rangefinder, which is disappointing because it is a little short of the 3,000 yard range that the manufacturer states that it will do. I suppose if you had a truly reflective target like a road sign, like a big, highway road sign, it may go out to that 3,000 yards, but on realistic targets like light colored metal structures and buildings, 2,200, 2,300 is going to be the limitation that you're going to see. And then after I fiddle around here a little bit, we are going to move over to our left and pause here for a second and range this Connex again, just to kind of confirm that it was able to do it. Still at 1,173, so the range is consistent. Then we're going to move over to a construction area and attempt to range some smaller targets here in anywhere from about the 11 to 1,200 yard range. And in hindsight, if I had put this rangefinder either back in first or perhaps best mode, we may have had a little bit more success out in this area. But that 1,100 to 1,200 yards seems to be a pretty consistent limit to its ranging ability when you're looking at things that are smaller or in a less ideal sort of environment where you have different things that it's catching a signal off of that are stacked at different distances from, like anywhere from 1,000 out to that dirt berm in the background, which is going to be closer to 1,600 yards. And anything, like I said, inside that 1,200 yard range, it seemed to range fairly consistently. But once you get past that, it becomes much more picky about the quality of the target that you're trying to range. And the last thing I want to talk about out here is going to be the image quality. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. The sharpness and the depth of field are more than acceptable. Everything from about 400 yards out to our 2,800 yard tree line is easy to pick out. The colors are good. The sharpness is good. And there is a slight bias towards the blue end of the color spectrum, but that is caused by a filter that Sig has chosen to put on the internal lenses of the rangefinder to help with the overall efficiency of our LED display, so that it can reflect a little bit more light back towards us and a little bit less light out the front of the rangefinder. But that being said, there is an issue with this rangefinder if your eye is not placed properly behind it. When I was using it by hand, if I got it misaligned, there were times when the image would become extremely blurry. There were other times when I would see an unusual amount of internal reflection that it appeared as like kind of a gray haze over the image. And so there is some limitation to what this rangefinder is capable of, but for something that costs between $150 and $200, I don't know that it can really be expected to perform better than it does. And I think with that, I am going to conclude this infield section of the review and move on to my closing thoughts. All right, so here we are back at the bench to wrap up this review and give you my final thoughts on the Sig Kilo Canyon rangefinder. And I'm going to start with just some of the basic facts that we were seeing throughout the video. Our maximum reflective target range was not 3,000 yards. We were in the 2,300 yard range. Trees, we actually exceeded the 1,200 that it says in the manual, and we're able to get just beyond 1,400 yards. And on deer, I couldn't find any 1,000 yard deer, but I was able to range some cows out to 700 yards. And that was using my adapter and my tripod. By hand, it was really more like 500 yards. And that's just because of the finicky nature of the rangefinder and my ability to hold it steady. And that was standing, freehanding it not leaning against anything, I was reliably able to do 500 yards on cows. And that being said, I need to make one correction. I had previously stated that I did not have the box, but the reality was I had misplaced the box. And so now that I have found it, I will show you what came in it. This is the lanyard. It's a decent lanyard, even though I don't ever use them. I do like that it has this little cinch, or little slide, whatever you want to call it, where you can get it tied around your wrist so you're not going to drop it. Obviously this little end goes into the slot where the lanyard goes, and it is also big enough where you can slide this the other way and comfortably wear it around your neck. And it's a pretty decent little soft, like a shoelace type of material. So it's nice that they include it if you are the type of person who prefers to use a lanyard. The other thing that comes in the box is this little manual. And really the only important thing in this manual is this page here where it shows the different groups for the ballistic calculations. And so what you would do is find your load on here and then select that group, and it's going to give you a basic general guideline for your drop, which you can choose MOA or mil radian, as we saw when I was showing the functions. But those are the groups. If you ever lose this, all of this information is on Sig Sauer's website in a digital PDF manual. Anyway, go ahead and throw that back in there. Just wanted to update you on that because I had found the box when I was rearranging all of my stuff. And then let's get down to who do I think this is for. I would say if you are on a tighter budget and you're trying to keep it under 200 bucks and you don't have a real expectation of shooting much beyond, say, 1,200 yards, where this thing seems to range most medium-sized targets well, obviously inside of 500 to 700 yards if you're going to be ranging silhouette or small steel plates. If those are the limitations or the requirements, I should say, that you have of a rangefinder and you like what you saw in this video, I would say give it a shot. Be aware that the build quality is going to be a little bit cheaper. It's definitely almost all plastic construction. I did cause, I don't know if you'll be able to see them, but just setting this thing down on some concrete and some rocks one day, it did get scratched up a little bit. It didn't affect the function, but it's going to scratch and deface easier than some other rangefinders that I've used in the past. Also, it does not have the tripod socket, so if you were planning on using a tripod to steady this thing, then this one's just not going to do that. But I don't want to say that it didn't perform reasonably well out there in the field. The image quality that we saw was good as long as the camera was aligned properly, and that's true with your eye as well. As long as you have your eye behind this thing properly, the image is actually quite good. I mean, as good as a pair of binoculars, more or less. But that is what you can expect from this thing, and I don't really have anything else to say about it. And I just want to thank all of you who have stuck around to the end. And if you want to hit that like button, or if you want to leave a comment, or if you have a question, feel free to just drop it down there in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to those when I see them. And thank you again. I hope you have a great day.